welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's story is going to be about as following. There is something among us that is slowly replacing people. In the midst of the lockdown, I have bought myself some solid gym equipment to continue working out at home. This came after hours of frustration of watching home workout videos on YouTube. I really missed the feeling of crunching out a rep after rep at the gym, and the closest I could get to was establishing my own home gym. My flat is a bit on the small end, so I could not place the equipment I bought anywhere inside my home. It was either switching my bed out for a bench press or putting it outside. Thankfully, right beside my bed, I have a driveway with a roof over it. I would have to park my car on the street, but it was well worth being able to work out like normal. The gym equipment fit quite snugly in my driveway, and I absolutely loved the setup. However, amidst working from home and meeting deadlines, I found I could only really work out at night under the dim orange driveway lights. And so, how I formed my routine. I would regularly get out there at 8 p.m. and work out until 9:30 before going straight to bed. With the new freedom of having access to a gym a few steps away, I pushed my workout time to later and later until I was working out at 11 p.m. when I should have been getting ready for bed. It was one of those nights when I finally realized the depth of my mistake. I was engrossed in a horror podcast I was listening to when suddenly I had a really strong feeling that I was being watched. I've gotten used to working out in the dim orange light, with a slight wind causing the leaves to rustle. The sound was odd, no longer made me jump, and I was truly comfortable with the night. But this time, something was off. I immediately stopped my podcast and for the first time felt exposed in the cool night air. I looked around and could see no one, but that primal feeling lingered, reminding me of danger. The street was dead silent. I have lived on that street for several years of my life, yet that night, it looked strange. I could almost swear I saw long, dark figures walking around everywhere, but they only existed in my peripheral vision. As soon as I focused on them, they seemed to fade into the night. Maybe I was just paranoid and making things up from the shadows like you do at night with random objects in your room. But that strong feeling of being watched really remained. So I continued to desperately search for the thing that was watching me, but in the end, I chalked it up to an effect of listening to a horror podcast that night. I continued. I put my earbuds back in and taped them to start playing the podcast again. If you feel like there's something watching you, there always is. I paused the podcast. This was not part of the story I was listening to. I rewinded it and played it again. The breathing was very heavy and shallow, like someone who had run a marathon. Whatever was making those sounds was standing completely still on the edge of the turn, just out of sight. I was going paranoid and starting to hear things as well. The podcast continued on as normal, but I was still on edge. Beads of sweat rolled down the side of my face, and it wasn't from physical exertion. I jumped when I heard my friend Andy's voice right beside me. "Dude, Ethan, are you okay?" he piped up. I stared at him in shock, confused as to how he suddenly appeared in front of me. My mind was starting to break down, and I was starting to question what I was seeing. I needed help, medical help. I started to think back that what could have possibly caused me to hallucinate like this? Did I hit my head? Andy waved his hand in front of my face and laughed. His expression then quickly shifted to a concerned look when I didn't start laughing along with him. Mate, you good? He asked. His presence caused knots to form in my stomach. Yes, where did you come from? I asked, still trying to rationalize the situation. The feeling of being watched was gone, but had been replaced by a sense of strong apprehension. I was sweating buckets now and started to consider running inside and calling myself an ambulance. There was something definitely wrong, but was it me? Or was it something really bad about to happen? I just walked up to you, but you seemed to be sitting there completely still and unaware, he said. I started to make sense of it. I was too absorbed in my own fear and thoughts to notice him walking up to me. I was even about to invite him inside, but I stopped as the one lingering question in my mind expressed itself more strongly. Andy, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? I asked with a wavering voice. Andy looked at me, his face half shadowed. Something was off about him. Andy wasn't usually like this. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 before putting it back in my pocket. Andy didn't seem to react. He continued to look at me with an unreadable expression before answering. Just wanted to check up on you. Why are you acting so weird, Ethan? He said. He mispronounced the word weird by emphasizing the middle sounds a bit too much. It was as if he was a computer and he had glitched. I looked over his hand and noticed that the scar on his ring finger was gone. He had gotten that scar from an insect bite when we were camping as teenagers. Andy, what happened to that scar on your finger? I asked now with barely any courage to speak. He looked over at his hand and smiled. It was at that moment that I realized his face seemed off too. This wasn't Andy. It was someone trying to impersonate him. Andy wouldn't act like this. He would not visit me in the middle of the night, and most importantly, he always had a scar on his finger. I never had one. Calm down, Ethan. He spoke with his voice distorting all over the place like his vocal cords were being pulled. He reached out his hands towards me while his face distorted into a demented grin that extended from ear to ear. It all happened in slow motion. Had I been in the right mind at that time, I probably would have reacted less violently, but my degrading psyche and will to survive played into my actions. I quickly picked up a metal weight that was laying right next to me and hit Andy, smack in the face as hard as I could. He flew back, his face now deformed and pushed in. Thick, very thick, yellow liquid oozed out of his orifices instead of blood, and he emitted a loud screech. Gosh, this screech physically hurt my head and nearly ruptured my eardrums. All the while, Andy kept staring at me until we both heard sirens in the distance. He smiled at me before the yellow liquid that had been oozing out of him suddenly turned a dark redder color. He closed his eyes and lay down on the floor as the police stopped in front of my house. The rest was a blur. They think I'm crazy, that I had an insulation-induced psychosis episode. They are thinking of diagnosing me with a Capgras delusion, but they are blind. They don't see it. There's something among us that is replacing us. One day it could be your friend, a parent, child, or spouse, but they are working their way through us. The above letter was written by a man that recently sent this to a medical health ward. He keeps on saying that his friend who visited him was an imposter. He nearly killed his friend in a violent outlash, and we are certain he's experiencing psychosis. However, today I saw Andy when driving home. He showed no signs of the horrible injury he had suffered last night. Damn, there is something among us that is slowly, really replacing us. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, and comment down below. And I'll see you tomorrow because I post every day, rain or shine. Bye.